great member of our conference, a physician by trade, of enormous consequence that we have a person that understands why this piece of the bill in particular today must be repealed. And I'm delighted to have the original sponsor of the bill, the gentleman, Mr. Boustany, and I would yield 5 minutes to him at this time.
The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Boustany, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend from Texas for yielding some time to me on this important debate. As a physician, I know firsthand about the needs out there with regard to long-term care. I've treated hundreds of patients who've needed it. This is a very important problem. It's an acute problem, and it's something that this Congress has to take seriously. I also have a personal stake in this. I lost my father 3 years ago, and he did not have a long-term care policy, and we had to deal with it, and we dealt with it. We were fortunate. As a family, we came together, and we were able to take care of his needs. Many families can't. That's why this Congress has to get serious about dealing with this problem. Now, our friends on the other side of the aisle had the last Congress, had two Congresses before, or the two Congresses to try to deal with this. And they proposed a health care bill. Yet there was no debate on any other alternatives. This was a one-size-fits-all. This particular program wasn't even vetted in the House committees, and yet it was added into the bill as a budget gimmick. That's not serious legislation, and that's not doing justice to the American people who are faced with these problems every single day. Washington learned from this mistake, and there are three basic lessons that we can learn from this class program that was added into Obamacare. This class program, a failed program, an unsustainable program by the administration's own admission. First, the first lesson, don't ignore reality. Democrat leaders ignored actuarial experts' warnings when they used the class program as a budget gimmick in Obamacare. President Obama cannot create a self-funded, sustainable program that prohibits underwriting unless he intends to force healthy Americans to participate. Most enrollees will be high risk, causing premiums to skyrocket, making class less appealing to healthy Americans. So the first lesson, don't ignore reality. Second lesson, simple, don't break the law. The administration planned to break the law by excluding Americans made eligible by the statute. And when Congressional Research Services attorneys warned of lawsuits, I sent letters to Secretary Sebelius as the Oversight Subcommittee Chairman on Ways and Means for her legal authority to make this change. Subsequently, she, and I think rightfully, suspended the program. But this does not correct bad law, a bad statute written into law. And unless we repeal class, the Department of Health and Human Services will be in violation of the law when it misses an important deadline for implementation in October of 2012 and again in 2014. The administration, I think, rightfully doesn't want to break the law, but we need to go further and repeal this. Otherwise, they are in violation of the law. And this is not my opinion. This is the opinion of CRS lawyers. So the first lesson, don't ignore reality. Second, don't break the law. And third, let's not compound our nation's long-term fiscal problems. A prominent Democrat and former Congressional Budget Office Director, Alice Rivlin, wrote, and I quote, "Since the class program is a new, unfunded entitlement, it should be repealed because it will increase the deficit over the long term," end quote. Pretty clear statement from a Democrat and former Congressional Budget Office Director. The President's own Deficit Commission agrees with this assessment, and our grandchildren simply cannot afford a new budget-busting entitlement when we already have entitlements that we're struggling with. We need to solve problems. We need to get our budget under control. We need to solve this problem of long-term care, and there are ways to do it. There are many ways to do it. I'm working on legislation. I've got it in draft form. I'm sharing it with fellow colleagues, Democrats and Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee. I believe firmly that we have to do the right thing here. And I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this rule. Let's repeal the class program, support H.R. 1173, and this will give us impetus to move forward on sensible legislation that will actually solve this problem and not add to the deficit. I believe beyond class repeal, we should make it easier for disabled Americans to save for their future needs. We can expand access to affordable private long-term care coverage. We can better educate Americans on the need for retirement planning, and there are ways to do this. There are a lot of good ideas on both sides of the aisle. I've already had conversations with Democrats on our committee. Let's solve a problem. Let's not add to the deficit. Let's not put the administration, by its own admission, and by the analysis of CRS attorneys, let's not put them in a position of actually breaking the law. That's not a good example to set for the American public. And I yield back.
The gentleman from Louisiana yields back. The gentleman from